Aloha and welcome to Thumbing Through Yesterday, the podcast where we take our favorite books from the shelves, blow the dust off them, and remind ourselves why it is we love them. My name's Tom Galley, and joining me today is Tony Pasculi.
Happy to be here.
And what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about A Fire Upon the Deep by Vernor Vinge. And this is where I have to confess that I have, again, broken the rules, the informal rules that we have, which we are all free to break at any time. But my own sort of rules for favorite is that I have read it multiple times, typically once a decade. I've only read this book once before.
Oh, well, I am actually quite glad that you broke the rules because this was delightful.
It's a fascinating book, and it is a book that has, I think of it as a favorite because I often think of it, but I have never returned to it. And I was like, why haven't I read that book? I should just go back and read it again. And as I was reading it, I went, oh, that's why I haven't read this book many, many, many times. It's a great, great book, but it doesn't fall into my category of favorites as being really fun and rewarding and just easy and pleasant to read. It's just like, oh my God, this is dense and It is challenging and it's rewarding. It is absolutely rewarding. But especially I was putting up a show this month, and I found myself just going, oh my God, just get through 10 pages. Get 10 pages before you fall asleep.
There's a lot to this book.
Yes.
And I'm not just talking about the length. I mean, it is a lengthy novel, but I mean, there are a lot of big ideas, or a lot of alien races. There are a lot of plots going on. And Vinge doesn't spoon feed us. I mean, he doesn't hide stuff from us, but he expects you to keep up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know when this was written?
1992.
1992.
Yeah.
Okay. That's going to come back around directly.
Is it? Okay. All right. So speaking of big ideas, the biggest idea, the idea that defines this whole sequence, the whole series, which you said is something like 9 books now? I don't know. I've only read 2.
That's what either Goodreads or Amazon told me. There are 9 books in this world, although supposedly there's actually a prequel that counts as a 10th that was written by his wife.
Interesting. So the biggest of the big ideas is something called the zones of thought. Mm-hmm. And basically the rough idea is that the closer you are to the center of the galaxy, the slower you can travel through space, and the stupider you will be. You are constrained by physics to just not be that bright.
Yep.
And if you can escape out of the unthinking depths, if you can escape the unthinking depths, you progress your way up to the slow zone, and then the beyond, where superluminal travel is possible and superintelligence is possible, and then the transcend.
Yeah. And it's not just intelligence. We're talking about changes to the laws of physics here, because computers that work in the high beyond don't work well in the middle beyond, work poorly in the low beyond, and don't work at all if you get into the bottoms.
Yes.
And hyperdrive, like you say, it becomes less and less effective. But if you slip from the low beyond into the slow, you're stuck.
Oh yeah.
There is no faster than light travel anymore. It's crazy to think that the laws of physics are graduated as you move out from the galactic center. But yeah, that's the premise here.
It's a really interesting way to address sort of post-singularity, which is a big thing with Vinge. He talks about singularity in fiction all the time. Not Cory Doctorow, who's the other guy? Charlie Strauss. Charlie Strauss has said, if you're writing science fiction at this point, you're not addressing the singularity. What are you even doing with your life? It doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. Because the singularity is upon us. So this is a good way to deal with that, because the singularity cannot happen in the unthinking depths. And I don't even know if it can happen in the slow zone. And in the beyond and in the transcend, races and individuals ascend to sort of basically godhood, but then they are so far beyond normal concerns that they only exist for a few years or decades, and they just like
years, because 10 years is the average lifespan for a transcendent being.
Yeah.
And they make fun because the one transcendent being we have direct interaction with is called Old One, because he's 11.
Yes.
He's been a transcendent being for 11 years, so he's a senior citizen.
Yeah. So that you get to deal with the singularity that way. We just postpone it or move it out into a different geographic region. And also, what is it, Drake's equation? Why are there no other intelligent races
the Fermi
contacting
paradox.
us? Because they're out there. They're not going to bother to, communicate with us unthinking peoples in the slow zone. Yeah.
And it applies to communication as well. Faster than light communication scales as you move out, further away from the slow zones in the middle or closer to the transcend outside.
So speaking of communication, another thing that's fascinating about this. So again, this takes place in 1992, which is at the beginning of the popular internet.
Usenet.
Usenet, yes. And a bunch of these sentient creatures communicate over something very much like Usenet.
And I absolutely love that. That was why I was asking about the year it was written. The fact that in the far future, with faster than light communication and transcendent beings, the most efficient method of communication is still a text-based messaging board. Yeah. A faster than light text-based messaging board with sentient translation programs. But it's a text-based messaging board with trolls, replete with trolls.
Absolutely, it's very much reminiscent of my actual Usenet experience. And there's different boards that people follow. We have the special threats interest group and the humans interest group and whatever, and people like cross-post messages to different groups. And then there are people talking about, I don't know if you remember this, before we got sort of universal email addresses. Before we got just name at domain, we used to have to route our email through different hosts. You'd say, okay, in order for me to get from this computer, my home computer, to your computer, I would have to navigate a series of hops, and I would include those in your email address. And if it stopped working for whatever reason, like one of those intermediate hosts went offline, I could reroute, but I had to do it manually. And they talk about that here also. It's like, oh, my net connection, my node is gone, and I'm having to go all the way around the galaxy. So it's taking me a long time to get messages now. Somebody help me.
Yep. Yeah, that guy was funny.
Yeah. They also talk about how their superluminal text-based connections are on the order of 30 kilobits a second.
They're dealing with again, the bandwidth technology that was conceivable in the 90s. Yeah. But I mean, that's, what's a standard broadband connection now?
For a LAN, you have 100 gigabits.
Yeah.
And over the internet, I've got, 250 megabits. Yeah. So, symmetric both ways. Yeah.
But hey, it's faster than light, and it can go completely around the galaxy if you hop it enough.
Yep. So. Yep. One more aside on that, just because this whole thing fascinates me, having been a part of the internet era growing up. The cargo that one of these ships is carrying is a one-time pad. Do you know about that? Do you know what a one-time pad is? I don't remember if they explained it in the book.
I inferred that it was, a single-use security encryption.
Yeah. It's the ultimate encryption device because it doesn't depend on a key rotating, using the same key over and over and over again. That can always be cracked. A one-time pad can never be cracked because it's a series of binary digits, and you take your message and you XOR it with these digits. And then if you have the same pad, you can XOR it out again. And there's no way you can do frequency analysis. You can't do any kind of analysis. It is completely secure. The challenge of a one-time pad is you have to get a copy of the one-time pad to your recipient. And that's what these guys are carrying. They're carrying a chunk of one-time pad.
1/3 of it. Yeah.
1/3 of it. Yeah. Yeah. And of course it's, you can't transmit that over the net because then it can be intercepted with a man-in-the-middle attack. So they actually physically transport it.
Yeah, and that becomes a massive convenience of a plot point, later in the book. And there are a few of those. I was actually going to criticize Vinge for some of his happenings of convenience.
Okay.
But there's an awful lot going on in this book. We might forgive a little bit of that.
The thing I would criticize is that, again, the human characters are underwhelming. I don't care. I don't care about any of this. Not that there's many of them. There's 2 children who survive. There's Ravna and there's Pham Nguyen, and that's it. We have like 6 human characters, right?
That's 4.
Oh, the 2 children. We have...
the parents are in there briefly, right?
Yeah. So we have Johanna and Jeffrey and Ravna and Pham Nguyen. Yeah, that's 4. And then we have the mom and dad very, very briefly.
Yeah.
And I don't give a shit about any of them. Yeah. But the wolves, the Tynes are amazing. They're amazing characters and one of the best races of aliens I've ever seen in any book. Yeah.
When we're first introduced to the Tines, we're thrown in the deep end.
Yes.
There. We have these intelligent beings that are having conversations, but these weird descriptions keep popping up. So, 2 of his eyes were watching this way. Wait, what? Huh? Okay, they've got more than 2 eyes. Some of his pack was over there. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
It takes a while to assemble a picture of what the Tines actually are.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, the idea of a pack intelligence, a pack creature, but they're restricted. A pack can only be a certain size, right?
Yes.
There's a size range for a functioning pack. 4 is the effective medium, and 6 is the common upper end. Yeah. If you get fewer than that, they can't function. If you get more than that, they become a degenerate mob sort of thing. So their society is all about not isolation, but all about space.
Yeah.
I remember early on, one of the human kids gets taken into this room, and the room is described as immense and tall with multiple balconies. I'm thinking, what do dogs need with an immense room that's high with balconies? I mean, what purpose? It's because they can't be close together. They literally have to have space between them.
And the reason they can't be, and this is why I love Vinge and science fiction in general. I mean, I love fantasy also, but I love what science. And if this had been a fantasy novel, you would go, okay, it's a pack intelligence, and boom, done. No further explanation and no further exploration of the consequences. Vinge goes, well, how does this pack intelligence work? And the way it works is they have these basically drum-like surfaces on their shoulders and hindquarters called tympana. And these emit high speech. And this is the equivalent of thought. And they can exchange thought at a very high frequency between their tympana. So that limits the effective size of a pack in terms of geometry, as in addition to number. Yeah, they can't be that far away because then you can't hear the rest of your pack members' thoughts. Yeah, but it also limits how close you can be. One individual, a pack, can be to another individual because your mind sounds will start to conflict with each other, and that leads to madness. And they talk about how in the South Seas on this world, people participate in these huge 100-member orgies where just nobody cares anymore. It's just like, woo, they're all, yeah.
That's crazy because the individual bodies have personalities, they have traits.
Yes. Yeah.
But they're non-functioning on the individual level, or even 2s or 3s. There's a certain minimum threshold that the qualities combine to a functioning thinking human, a functioning thinking entity.
Yeah.
And because of this, individual parts of the body can die and be replaced with new pack members.
Yeah.
And the entity evolves, it changes, but it continues with the same or similar identity.
That is a massive plot point. We have an individual called Woodcarver who's been alive for, 500 years? Or
500 or 600 years.
Yeah, because they keep renewing their members. But now they're at the point where they've inbred so much that in order to maintain their soul, as they call it, their individual identity, that some of their members, like one's a good talker, but it's physically weak, and one's just like a drooling idiot, but it's got some essential quality to the soul they have to have.
Yep.
And even the name Woodcarver, which gets extended to one of Woodcarver's experiments, comes from the idea that they are shaping other packs, and this is how they have dominance over this part of the world. They pick and choose members they think are going to work well together to create individuals who serve their purposes.
Yep. The woodcarver, her creation Flenser, his creation Steel, are all about deliberately shaping packs for certain traits, for certain abilities.
Yeah.
And it's all very Frankenstein, and that they're successful and that they get a functioning pack, but the pack has more than they expect of it. And in every case, it ends up turning on its creator.
Yeah. And of course, Flenser is such a great name. To flens something is like to strip the fat. And Flenser's techniques are basically torture. Yeah. Yeah. So they create these incredible individuals, and they rule by fear, and everyone hates Flenser. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're too scared to even think about doing anything about it.
So another fun thing about the fact that Vinge goes ahead and says, okay, how does this pack communication work? And he says it's acoustic. So 2 interesting ramifications of that. So one is they can't get close to each other. So when humans show up, humans don't operate that way. So for the very first time, they can be in direct physical contact with another intelligent being. And they like that. Yeah. So that gives humans a huge advantage there. The other is, as you say, they have to have these balconies because they literally can't be that close to each other. They can't be in enclosed areas because even as an individual pack, they just get discombobulated by the echoes.
They had a very difficult time boarding the spaceship because of the hard surfaces, the small spaces, and the sound reflections.
But the best, and this is just, I love this, is that in communication with Ravna on the Outward Bound, or Out of Bounds.
Out of band 2.
Yeah. The pack gains access to radio technology. And by applying radios to their tympana, they are able to extend a single pack over miles because radio can communicate at, basically light speed. Yeah.
Now, I have just a little bit of a conceptual boggle as to whether or not acoustic information can be transferred fast enough for active thought. But I don't know how you measure how fast a thought moves around inside your brain. So maybe it's conceivably possible. I don't know. Clearly it's possible. He wrote it in the book. So
it's a fair quibble. I had the same thought. Is that really enough bandwidth? But the individual members are individually intelligent. They can't stand on their own. They're not that smart, but they're very, very bright individually. So that you don't need, it's kind of like a network game, right? You're not updating your entire screen over the network. You're just updating the world state. And locally, you have enough horsepower to generate everything else from the world state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll let that slide.
Okay.
But this, so just starting at the beginning, the prologue on this could be 2 novels easily. Because they throw a lot at us in the prologue, and of course you don't know how important it's going to become. But there's a history that ended 5 billion years ago that we need to read to find out what the blight was and how it was stopped and what what do they end up called? The countermeasure is.
Yes.
And then B, we need a novel about the humans discovering this, setting up their camp, trying to be safe, and then accidentally unleashing this thing. There's 2 novels in the prologue, or there should have been.
Yeah. So one of the things I appreciate about this book is that in spite the fact that there is so much information here that you have to take in terms of world building, and I think it's handled pretty smoothly, at its core, the story it's a chase.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, oops, there's a horrible threat to the entire galaxy, and there may be a solution over there, and so we're going to go over there, and everything else is going to chase us. And can we get there first? Actually, combined with there's a war on that planet where they're going. Yep. So will that thing even exist by the time we get there? And who are the good guys and who are the bad guys? But the core of it is this chase scene. Yeah.
Yep.
So
this is such a thick book. I took so many notes. I went the other way. I took too many notes in this one. But this is a neat chunk here. So humans accidentally awaken an ancient AI, an ancient transcendent being, which doesn't play by the transcendent rules, but neither here nor there, that ultimately gets called the Blight.
Yeah.
But in the early stage, and this is still in the prologue, but the Blight is becoming awake. Mm-hmm. How long is this to actually want to read the whole thing? Sure. The hours came to minutes, the minutes to seconds, and now each second was as long as all the time before. Right, this thing, as it's growing, the rate at which it's growing is so fast, that a second now is equal to the months it's spent putting itself together before that.
Yes. This is the big concern with artificial intelligence. This I think maybe this is why I wanted to read this book again, as we are staring down the barrel of quickly evolving artificial intelligence in the form of LLMs and generative AI. And the people who work on these things, I don't know if you know this, people who work on these things talk about something called the probability of doom, P-doom. It's like, what are the odds that humanity is extinct because of an artificial superintelligence takes over and just pursues its agenda with no regard to our well-being? And people who are actively working on this have P-dooms as high as 50% within 5 years. And you're like, dear God, why are you working on this?
Because if I'm not, somebody else will be.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. And the consensus among all the AI researchers is still around 5 or 10%. It's huge. It's huge. Mine is not. My personal I think we're just not there. I think we're going to get to some upper limit very, very quickly, and it's going to take some other huge leap to get to the next level of artificial super intelligence. But once you get there, once you get to the point where your intelligence is quick enough is faster than human thought and can enhance itself, then you get a runaway, exponential explosion of intelligence. Yeah. And then what? You just hope it was properly aligned before it took off. Yeah.
Hope enough people were nice to it that it regards us fondly.
Always say please and thank you to ChatGPT.
Always, yep. Yeah. Following that same thing, right? Humanity, the original people who woke it up, realize they have screwed up. They're trying to sneak away, and the AI gets onto the escape ship.
Yeah.
The power was aboard with milliseconds to spare. And it's just so accelerated.
Yes.
Right? It's like, okay, I'm on the ship now. Oh, well, I can't stop them from escaping, but I can blow them up. I'll do that.
Yeah. I love how even the human characters talk about events happening in, let's say, we have about 1,000 seconds before this happens.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is wild. What did you think of the Scrode writers?
Oh my God. That was one of the best plot twists I have ever encountered. I was so unprepared for that. And so taken aback by that. Mm-hmm. And then we get the redemption of Blue Shell. It's like, yes,
oh my God.
Yes. So sad, but yes. But yeah, that was crazy. And to think that whatever the blight was, that it was, 5 billion years ago, it put this into motion just in case.
Yeah. So to set this up, the Scrode riders are these creatures which are basically semi-sentient plants, and they have evolved to just sort of exist in the water and think deep thoughts. And someone comes along and uplifts them and says, oh, you know what? I'm going to put you in this little wheeled device, and that will retain memory for you, because they can't retain memory on their own. So they use the Scrodes as an outboard memory that allows them to retain long-term memories, but also to move around. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This makes them mobile, makes them functional. And they're such peaceful, well-meaning creatures that they exist on every planet, everywhere. Everyone just gets along with the Scrode riders. Yeah.
They're among the most reliable and trusted traders throughout, all of the zones.
Yes.
They go down to the low beyond and all the way up to the borders of the transcend.
Yeah. And then it turns out, is revealed in a particularly damning moment, that the Scrodes are basically Hezbollah pagers. Yeah. They're just, the supply chain has been corrupted from its inception, and they are a virus waiting to just, detonate at the Blight's choosing. Yeah. Crazy.
Nope. Did not see that coming at all.
Yeah.
And then the drama that ensues on the out of band after that revelation. I mean, that was intense.
Yeah.
The two humans at odds over whether or not to simply murder them.
Yeah.
Ravna booby traps the ship to protect their life, belatedly, only after the showdown with Fam. But
yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I love the whole concept of the race. I love the idea of uplift. It's one of my favorite tropes from science fiction novels. David Brin wrote a whole sequence of uplift novels, including Startide Rising, I want to say, is the first one, and the Uplift War. And there's one more in that sequence. And it's considered in his books, it's considered a signal of an intelligent race is if you have uplifted another race. If you have uplifted another race, then you must be an intelligent race.
Yeah.
Yeah. And humanity's big claim to fame is that they were the only race that anyone is aware of that was not, in fact, uplifted. They achieved intelligence on their own and then uplifted dolphins and chimpanzees. So I like this. I like this idea. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So we're given, there are just all kinds of giant thoughts to this. They talk about the lifetime of civilizations, and down in the slow, a civilization can't last more than a few thousand years, right? It's impossible. But even up in the higher things, they don't measure the lifespan of individuals or of races. They measure the lifespan of civilizations. And we only directly meet a few types of aliens.
Yeah.
But, they're casually talking about thousands, tens of thousands of civilizations, and the ones that have gone transcend and the ones that have simply died. And they're always coming and going, and they're systems that are, for 500 million years have had different civilizations, different races come, thrive, falter, and then, barely linger as new inhabitants take over.
This book, despite the fact that it is essentially just a chase scene and a ground battle, encompasses so much. It's truly epic. I mean, just the scale of it in terms of, space and time. Really incredible. Millions of years, billions of years. Yeah.
Billions of years.
Billions of years. Yeah.
So the Blight was last defeated, was it 5 billion or 500 billion? I guess it was 5 billion years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. There are things, right? And this is one of the things. So we don't know what happened 5 billion years ago. We know that humanity has found an archive, and that they have awakened it. But this archive was not only a hiding place for the Blight, it also happened to be a hiding place for the anti-Blight.
Yes. Countermeasure, they call it.
Countermeasure, they end up calling the thing, which isn't sentient, but it's a transcendent machine designed to work in the slow.
Yeah.
But what is this facility? In what facility did the previous races store both the Blight and the anti-Blight? Why is it there? What was it? What sense did it make?
I don't know. It's just a Wuhan lab. Maybe.
In order to cure, you have to understand.
Yes. I mean, it's really hard to appreciate the motives of some of these things. Some of the powers are refreshingly human in their approachability and comprehensibility, but others just are not.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's like, well, that tracks. Yeah. So who knows? Some of this you just have to shrug and go, okay, they're super intelligences from 5 billion years ago. How can I hope to understand? Yeah.
Yep. Now, I was less than satisfied with the ending, with the what the counter agent ended up being and how it was implemented.
Really?
Yes, because it was very hand of God.
I was fascinated. I was like, how? Because I hadn't read this book in I want to say 30 years, and it was like, okay, so they get there and they activate the countermeasure. What on earth can it possibly do to a transcendent being from this distance at this depth? What can it be? What could it be?
Well, my expectation was that whatever it was going to set up book 2 of the trilogy, and I would be hooked to reading the next. But no, it's a wave of a magic wand and everything is fixed at horrific cost. But a wave of the magic wand and everything was fixed.
I wouldn't say everything was fixed. I would say everything was irrevocably changed.
Yep.
So what the wave of the magic wand actually does is it alters the shape of the zones of thought. Mm-hmm. And on a scale which is hundreds of light years, thousands of light years.
I think hundreds of thousands of light
hundreds
years.
Of thousands of light years. I mean, it is again, if you're talking about epic scale and scope, it's just a staggering thing that happens at the end. So to me, it's a little bit more than a wave of a magic wand. It's not like the end of Ender's Game. It's like, whoop, kill the queen, pew, everything stops. Yeah, it was like this huge thing happens that reshapes entire civilizations. Yeah.
Well, that's. So this is what's the video game with Master Chief?
Halo.
Yeah. This is Halo, right? They're going to destroy the entire galaxy to stop the flood. Yeah. This is the same scale of that. They reshaped it so that the slow reached clear out to an area that used to be transcend. They have taken all of these civilizations and they've killed them all. Millions upon millions of sentient beings, thousands of civilizations destroyed. Most of them quite literally, like dead.
Yeah. Because their technology no longer works.
Yeah, and we've got a few who are stuck in spaceships that may eventually make it to a place where they can land and breathe the air. And it doesn't actually, it stops the stops the blight, but it doesn't kill the blight because we've got the blight functioning in the slow already, through the scrodes and through other things. It's handicapped by the lack of bandwidth, but it doesn't stop it from actually functioning. So it's still out there. Everywhere that it took over, it's still there, waiting for somebody else to blunder into it. It just can't go anywhere except at subluminal speeds.
I don't know. I found that very satisfying as a cataclysmic finale.
Well, the scale of it, the cataclysmic nature of it, I approved of.
Yeah.
The fact that it took 2 minutes of him sitting there going, oh, yes, it's a transcendent machine from before. There are things even more powerful than powers. Poof.
Yeah.
That was just...
That was insufficiently set up for you.
It was.
Okay.
And it was also another one of those magic moments that the counter agent by itself couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It needed something. What did it need? It needed input from a power.
Yes.
That just happened to come along at the right time. Without FAM, that thing...
Yeah, without FAM, they can't activate it.
If Ravna had gotten there and found it, it's like, oh, there's some mold on the wall here.
Yep. Well, FAM is interesting. I think the second publication order book, which is a prequel to this story, is mostly FAM's story with the Cheng Ho, which happens thousands of years before this. And he is presented to us as a constructed entity, sort of reassembled from records and DNA and whatever, and is used as a mouthpiece by Old One. And then as Old One is dying, he just shoves a bunch of shit into FAM's brain, which they call God Shatter. And he can tap into it sometimes, but he doesn't know what's in there really. He's like Johnny Mnemonic. He's like just a bunch of stuff in here, and maybe it'll be useful sometime, maybe it won't, and maybe it will kill me in the meantime. Yeah. So it is very, very fortunate that he is along. But Old One sets him on that path. Old One does dump this stuff in there so that he can do this.
Yeah. I mean, there is... It's not completely thin, but it's again, it's a convenience thing. I don't guess it's any less or more convenience than Frodo being chosen to carry the ring.
Well, why does Sam go along with Frodo? Because if Sam's not there, that book ends very differently.
Yep, true.
Yeah.
Yep, and they don't kill Gollum.
Yeah.
If they did the reasonable thing and kill that little wiry thing. Yeah, I don't know. Something about the whole payoff there was lacking for me. The sun dimmed a bit. That's enough power to reshape the zone of thought across tens of thousands of light years.
That's true. I mean, they didn't even suck up all the power from the sun. They just made it dark briefly.
Yeah.
It's like,
And maybe other suns are going dark in places we can't see, right? I don't know.
But we don't understand the physics of how the zones work anyway. I don't know how much power it takes to reshape those.
That's true.
Yeah.
Could be a couple of AA batteries would get you a light year. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking hard to find things to nitpick in this book. I mean, there are some stuff I have to stretch, but this is just an amazing book. There are so many amazing things in here.
It is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing, and it is the kind of book that you can't read fast, and you don't want to read fast because it's like, oh my God, let me take a day to process that. Yeah.
And they're big-ass chapters, too.
Yes.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah.
So I mean, you make it through a chapter and you really need to sit down and go, okay, what just happened? Let me think this through. What was involved? What is the ramifications? But I mean, we're dealing intimately with two very alien races, right? The Tynes and the Scrodes, in addition to humans, kind of humans.
Oh, and the transcendent powers.
Yeah, we flirt with those. We have some contact with those. But I mean, we really get to know the Tynes and Tyne society and how it works. We get a pretty good look at the Scrodes and what it's like to be a sea anemone.
Yeah.
I love aliens that are actually alien.
Yes.
And these aliens are alien, and yet they're still relatable.
I found the Tynes much more relatable than the human characters. I got really involved. In fact, Scriber? Scriber dies early on, and it's just like, oh, that's a blow. That's my favorite character, and he's gone. Yeah. Yep. And then, Tyrethect. These are the two characters we meet in the very, very beginning. We're figuring out who the Tynes are, Tyrethect and Scriber.
And Pilgrim.
Isn't Pilgrim Tyrethect? Oh, no, Pilgrim is not Tyrethect. Nope. Yeah,
Pilgrim is the one that brings Scriber and Tyrethect together.
Yes, okay. But yeah, we lose Tyrethect also. Tyrethect sort of pack gets merged with the remnants of Flenser in a battle, and we don't know if we're ever going to see Tyrethect again. Yeah. Yeah, so these are big, big losses. When mom and dad die, it's like, it sucks for the kids, but oh well, I don't even know who they are. Can't even remember their names.
Can't even remember. They were significant in that they were the ones that got the counteragent out.
Yes.
Without knowing what it was.
Yeah.
They didn't even know it was a good thing. They just knew it was a thing.
Yeah.
And they knew this because other AI, and this, again, it's a prologue.
Yeah.
It doesn't go into depth here. But it seemed to me that whatever archive they awakened had kind of cloned two of the scientists that were there into virtual entities. And those two cloned virtual entities were the ones that identified that there was a threat to the blight. And somehow they were still around, because when Pham is dying, he mentions their names. He mentions the names of those two human scientists.
I'm going to say I had forgotten about the prologue until you brought it up, and I flipped back and said, "Oh yeah, shit, there was a prologue." I vaguely remember reading that because it took me almost 4 weeks to read this book, so it had sort of bopped out of my mind. But the whole idea of archives, I really like. That civilizations come and go, and there's just tons of information that's left over from a dead civilization. You could go and go, oh, no one's looked at this for a while. I wonder if there's anything useful in here. Oops, this one's booby-trapped. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, they're all booby-trapped.
Have you read Murderbot, by the way?
Murderbot. That sounds familiar.
It's a recent sequence by Martha Wells. The idea of archives reminds me of that. It's about a security unit who is half human, half robot. He calls himself Murderbot. Okay,
no, this is not ringing a bell.
Okay, all right. I recommend that series. The first book is called like All Systems Red or something like that. And it's a series of novellas, actually. They're very, very fast and very, very fun. And Nowhere, the whole sequence started like 5 years ago, I want to say. So we won't get to them in this show for 15 years. But in the meantime, read them on your own. Yeah.
All right.
What'd you think of the Apprehanti? They are the ones who call themselves the Alliance for the Defense.
Oh, we just needed to have a bully race.
Yeah.
And that's all. It didn't matter that they were pretty butterflies. They could have been hopping pigs or sentient blobs. It really wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah.
I did love the fact that the traitor. No, I can't even think of his name. But Out of Band has put in for emergency repairs after they fled the fall of Relay. They're at a station where those butterfly folk were hanging out. And the traitor was scared to death of them, but not so scared that he didn't try to make a deal on the sly with the Out of Banders to pick up, of all things, little cubes of crystalline carbon from a previous transcendent civilization. Nobody knew what they were for, but people like to collect them.
Yeah.
As long as they fit together.
Yeah.
These are the collectibles of the far, far future.
Yeah.
Or present. We're not actually... Oh, yeah, it is the future because humans all came from Earth.
Yes. Yeah. I forget if Earth is mentioned, but the civilization that Ravna comes from and the two children, which I can't remember the name of, Siander Kai, something like that.
Yeah.
Is basically a Swedish sort of civilization. Yeah, I'm not sure what happens to the rest of Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was cool. Purple irises, rather.
Yeah.
They mention Earth and that, humanity started there. They don't tell us whether or not Earth is still populated or still around.
I mean, it could be. It's in the slow zone.
It's in the slow zone.
Yeah. So they got out. No, they're Norwegian, right? Because they speak a Norwegian dialect, right? It's called something like Noversk or something.
I just kind of read over it.
Yeah,
it wasn't important to me what the word was. I just recognized that this was the name and moved on.
Yeah. One of the things, I'm getting down to my last couple notes here. One of the things I enjoyed is the Scrode Riders, because they're basically plants, sea plants, are not very expressive, and so they will speak their expressions out loud, which is a thing that was in common with the early net and still today. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, one of them, I forget whether it's blue shell or green leaf or vice versa, actually says out loud, "I am shaking my head in disbelief."
Yep.
I love that.
Well, it's the only way. Yeah, I mean, they are, they're sea anemones is how I picture them, sturdy sea anemones.
Yeah.
Reading the expressions on a sea anemone, I mean, I guess if you lived amongst them long enough, you would learn to do it.
Yeah.
But the Scrode is the cart.
Exactly.
Right?
They are
and
Scrode
they refer
riders.
to them as Scrode riders.
Yeah.
And then, Greenleaf gets her cart shot out from under her, and a lesser replacement
Yes.
manufactured. But I don't know that they ever tell us the name of the creatures. I don't know if they have a name independent. It's like if we were called car drivers,
Yeah.
rather than humans.
I don't think they have a name other than that. They're riders. They are Scrode riders. And because in order to communicate and have memory, they have to have this cart.
Right,
so if
but
you're not actually a rider, you're not.
We know that they exist without the carts.
They do.
Right?
Yes.
They populate the oceans of their home worlds and mini worlds.
Yeah.
Without the Scrodes, they're busy being slightly thoughtful sea anemones.
Yes. Yeah. I don't recall.
I don't recall if they gave them a name or not. I feel like it's something that should have happened if it didn't.
All right.
I love that though. But they have effectively no short-term memory.
Yes.
Or they have very little transition from short-term to long-term, because to stand in the surf and catch food as it comes by, you don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
You need to remember things that happen a lot. So long-term memory is a thing, but it takes a while to pound in. Yeah. So the idea that that's what the cart is. It's basically a memory buffer to hold on to it until
it can become permanent memory.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, they're wonderful, truly alien aliens. They are not bipedal. They don't have human brains or human communication. They literally could not exist without uplift. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Reality graphics.
Reality graphics.
Reality graphics. I think this is their version of the Star Trek replicator. They are able to create things, to create food, to create stuff out of nothing.
Yeah.
And it's problematic because if you are a high beyond ship that's high beyond tech, and you go into the lower beyond or even the middle, and your reality graphics stop working, you can't feed yourself, right? You actually have to think to stock your ship with real food before you head out. And that was something he just blew right past. It gets mentioned 3 or 4 times in there, but you can create matter from nothing. Well, maybe not from nothing. They don't tell us much about the tech, but they can fabricate things. And Pham uses some of this. He uses reality graphics to fabricate some of the weapons and the power armor that he makes on out of band.
Yeah.
It's hard to say out of and not follow it with bound.
It is.
Out of band in the early part of their trip. And then, of course, I love he gets so hoisted on his own petard. He gets so paranoid by the fact that the Scrodes are compromised that he starts booby-trapping the ship.
Yeah.
But the farther they go into the closer they get to the slow, the less reliable his automation becomes. And his automation actually sets fire to the ship and threatens their lives and destroys his cool power armor, which really, 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 really would have come in handy once they landed.
Yep. Yeah. This is an amazing book. Everyone should read it at least once if you like space opera and epic science fiction. And having read it again after 25 years, it might be another 25 years before I read it again, if I ever do, because it's a favorite because it is so good. And the ideas stick with me, but it is not a favorite, and I just want to it's not a comfort read. I don't want to read it every year.
There is so much going on in it. You can't take this book lightly, or you'll. And more than once I was reading it before bed and ended up having to go back and restart the chapter the next day because I couldn't remember what was going on.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got interpersonal relationships going on, 5 or 6 different plot lines of these. Yeah. In different races and between different races. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the overarching storyline going on. And I was looking through, I took an awful lot of notes, but most of the notes that I took in the early part of the book are about what the hell is going on here? And they do get answered, later on in the book. I find as you learn more about what the transcend is and what the blight is. And
all right, so here's the question. Are you going to read more of the Zones of Thought series? Has this inspired you to press on with the series or no?
Well, I do want to. Yes, I think I will read more of it. I'm curious as to, let me take this from a different direction. So this came with an excerpt from what they call in the sequel, which is 2 years later, still set on the Tynes homeworld. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, what is the story going to be? Because this was all about epic, transcendent beings and space travel, like you said, space opera. And now we're on a world that is so far in the slow that, they could build rocket ships. They could do solar system exploration. Probably not in the lifetime of the characters that we've known. Now, I'm really, really, really curious what that book is going to be.
Well, it's interesting because as soon as because the Tines are very, very bright, but they don't have a culture of working well together because they can't be close together. It makes it difficult for them to cooperate. And so they exist largely as individuals, which is interesting because on the scale of things, they are sort of analogous to the powers who also exist only as individuals. They don't cooperate well. Mm-hmm. And so it makes them hard to have any kind of agency in the world, the universe. But as soon as they discover that humans exist and that humans have these capabilities, they're like, well, shit. One, we could partner with humans and have a massive advantage, but also we are so much better than humans. Mm-hmm. If humans can do this, if humans got off their home planet in whatever 1,000 years, we're going to do it in 200 years. So I imagine that's what the next book is. I haven't read it. I have never read it. So, yeah.
Well, I think that I will follow up just because this was such an enjoyable read. It was well written. It was mind-bendingly expanding, almost painfully expanding at times.
It is, as that goes, it's one of the most exhilarating science fiction books in terms of ideas. I mean, this is up there with Anti-Memetics Division for me. Yeah. Yeah. So,
which, and he kind of drops us in the deep end at the beginning, but he pays off on pretty much all of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, by the time I've gotten to the end of the book, it just everything meshes so nicely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I'm a little disappointed with the mechanism of the end, but and then there's another novel waiting. What happens to the 10,000 civilizations that just got screwed by this?
And there's also the second book in publication order, which is called A Deepness in the Sky, which is Pham's story thousands of years before with the Cheng Ho. Yeah, which is also, I don't remember much about it, but I remember it being very, very good.
Yep, I think I would like to pursue these, but they take, I hope, I don't know if I should hope the other two take less reading or if I should hope they're every bit as wonderful as this is.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is kind of like jumping into the Game of Thrones books. I mean, they're good books, but wow, is it a commitment to read one?
Yep. All right. What's next?
Well, I thought as dense and magnificent and wonderful as this, we should do something a little bit on the lighter side. My pick is Moby Dick, Herman Melville's classic.
Moby Dick. I think Moby Dick has an unfair reputation as being dense and challenging. I remember really enjoying it when I read it.
It's a page turner. To me, it's a page turner.
Yeah. So looking forward to that. Good. Moby Dick.
Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.